Kenny Dillingham believes that the Arizona State Sun Devils could be the college football blue blood of the 2020s. My argument is, Coach, you need to look a little further north at BYU.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, executive producer at the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah, and a 13-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident BYU expert and insider as your host on this here podcast. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars a part of your day. All right, coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about an argument that Kenny Dillingham made in favor of Arizona State that I think that BYU surpasses in droves. We'll get to that. We'll also talk about BYU and the ESPN FPI Football Percentages Index, and does it give BYU some hope, even if they were to miss out on having Jake Retzlaff under center. And we'll finish up today's show, still on the football front, but introduce you to a new quarterback prospect for BYU, and one who hasn't started a high school football game at the varsity level. All right, starting off today's show, Kenny Dillingham is a guy who is very prone to outbursts. We all saw that last year on national television as he used some pretty profane language to protest the 1 second being added back on. And it's unfortunate BYU couldn't cash in on that final play as Chase Roberts came up a yard short of an epic comeback for the BYU Cougars. But he made an argument earlier this week about why he believes that Arizona State, in his opinion, should be the, quote, blue blood of the 2020s. He told on3.com this, quote, "You can build something very, very unique. Every 10 years, a team shows up on the map and they're a blue blood to the next generation. They're not a blue blood to the people my age, but they're a blue blood to the 10-year-olds, the 11-year-olds, and the 12-year-olds you're eventually going to recruit. You have Clemson this last cycle from 2010 to 2020. They just showed up. People think they've been around forever. You have Oregon from 2000 to 2010. You go back in history and figure out which teams have shown up in which era. There hasn't been a team in this era in the 2020s. As he further points out, he believes that the lifestyle that you can have in Arizona, if we can create some staff consistency, and then we're in a league where we can continually compete to win, unquote. Okay, Coach, I respect that. You're obviously trying to put on for your home state. He is an Arizona native and obviously an ASU guy through and through, and I can wholeheartedly respect what Kenny Dillingham is saying there. But I've got to say, Coach, if you want to make that argument, why aren't the BYU Cougars in this conversation? Because simply put, BYU and the state of Utah in general, in my opinion, surpasses those down there in Arizona. Now, I know I have some listeners down there in the Valley. I've got family that's married into my family that are Arizona natives, so I'm probably going to step on some toes here. But like Kenny Dillingham, I'm a Utah guy. Born and raised in this state, and I put on for the 801. But here's the deal. I wrote down some arguments as to why I think BYU has as good of an argument, if not better argument, than what Kenny Dillingham is saying about Arizona State. Well, number one, the state of Utah, where BYU is located, is the U.S. News best state in the union across all 50 states in the United States of America, 3 years running. They have the youngest state in the union on overall age, best economy in the union, or at worst, top three, depending which metrics you look at. BYU has an alumni network that literally spans worldwide and can absolutely find you a job wherever you want to settle, whether it's along the Wasatch Front, you want to go to Arizona, you want to go to the East Coast, or you want to go somewhere international. There are BYU alumni that you can connect with literally worldwide. Now, if you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that network obviously gets extended due to the church connection. Other things. Well, here's the thing I know about Arizona, and I work with a guy who's an Arizona native, not born in Arizona, but Patrick Kinahan. Guy is an Arizona guy through and through, an ASU alum, and he'll probably want to lambaste me for making this argument, but I'm still going to talk about something he talks about often. Here's the deal. In Arizona, they have the Arizona Cardinals, they have the Phoenix Suns, you have the Arizona Diamondbacks. At one point, you had the Arizona Coyotes, but they're now the Utah Mammoth. That's another story for another day. But the point is, Arizona State, at best, are they fourth fiddle in terms of the conversation with regards to sports media and the like? And at worst, somewhere down fifth or sixth. They're way down the totem pole because the NFL, if it's in a market, absolutely dominates that market. If you want to talk about football in the state of Utah, who are the two dominant forces in football? The University of Utah and the BYU Cougars. It's simply put, they are the NFL team here. They dominate the airwaves. I have worked in sports radio for 15 years. I can tell you the formula for success in sports radio is not to get away from what we like to call the hits. What are the hits? Well, it's the Utah Jazz, the Utah Utes, the BYU Cougars, and now you can insert the Utah Mammoth. Those are and RSL, a little bit Real Salt Lake and the like. But here's the deal. BYU is a far bigger deal in the local sports media market, and quite literally, in my opinion, nation, if not worldwide, than Arizona State can ever hope to be. I absolutely respect, like I said, what Kenny Dillingham is trying to say here. But the other thing about this is, if you're in Arizona, it's 120 gazillion degrees. It feels like the surface of the sun. Here in Utah, what do we top out at? Maybe 105 every once in a while. During the summer, it's usually, if it goes beyond 100 degrees here, it's pretty crazy. The other thing about it is, fans at BYU, they know who you are if you're an athlete at Brigham Young University, particularly a football or basketball player. You can not have seen the field or the court all season long, and there are going to be fans who know who you are. You are a big deal. You are revered in Provo, Utah. Unlike many places, you are going to be able to go and play the sport that you love. So, Kenny Dillingham, thank you for arguing in favor of Arizona State. I would expect nothing less. But simply put, Utah is a better place to be. It's got BYU, who, by all accounts, is flush with NIL cash, because that's the other thing about this. I hear Kenny Dillingham talking all the time about his need to see an increase in NIL funding for the Arizona State Sun Devils. BYU has brought NIL to bear. Now, Texas Tech, I'm sure, would have an argument that they may outdo BYU in that respect. I can understand Texas Tech arguing that they should be in this conversation. There is an opening to be that, like I said, that team of the 2020s. Because, yeah, we have not had a dominant force emerge. Now, it is 2025, so we are halfway through this decade. Can BYU own the next 5 years in basketball and football and assert themselves? And particularly, I think with Kenny Dillingham being a football coach, could Kalani Sitake assert the BYU football program as the class of the Big 12 and say once and for all, yeah, you remember that team from the 2020s? Yeah, it was the blue and white. It's BYU. It's the Cougars, Kalani Sitake and his team. They emerged as a dominant force. It is there for the taking for BYU. And yes, NIL is going to play a massive role for BYU if they want to bring in top-tier talent. It already is. But one thing that Kalani Sitake has been very clear about, and I wholeheartedly endorse what he says about this, is that if you're coming to BYU simply put for a check to make money, it's not the program for you. BYU stands for more than that. Yes, they are competitive in NIL. Some would argue that they are top bidders. Great. I love all that. But beyond that, BYU stands for more. It's a church-affiliated school. They espouse ideals and standards that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints espouses literally worldwide. You are the front porch in many respects of the church, and obviously playing for a university that's affiliated with said church. The bigger point is there is a bigger deal. There's a bigger, I guess, picture that you're involved with when you play at BYU. And the best part is you can now play high-level, top-tier football. You can make quite a bit of money in NIL. And also, once again, it can stand for more than just making money along the way. You can be part of something bigger than just yourself. So, Kenny Dillingham, I appreciate the argument. But in my opinion, it's the BYU Cougars who should own that crown, or at least have the opportunity to own that crown if they can capitalize. All right. What are the chances BYU can capitalize in 2025, even if they do not have QB1, speaking of Jake Retzloff? Well, we're going to get into that next. If you roll on right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, the NBA playoffs and the NBA finals are here, and the best part is it feels like every single game there is a highlight-worthy performance, a major momentum shift in-game, or just simply put, a can't-miss moment. And whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout play, there's never been a better time to get in on the action and do it with our friends at FanDuel. Make it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live, whether you're working mobile or you're on your desktop. With player props, performance trends, same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. If you want to put some money down on the heavy favorites in the NBA Finals, speaking of the OKC Thunder, or you think that the Indiana Pacers can shock the world and win the championship, you can do all that with our friends at FanDuel. And the best part is if you got to read on a player who's heating up maybe in game, why not back it up with the same game parlay that can pay out extra money for you guys? And how could $200 in bonus bets incentivize you and add to the excitement if your first $5 bet hits? It's as simple as that right now. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Go to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets just like that. Make every moment more with FanDuel, as they are an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Thank you once again for checking this show out. If you have not done so already and you like what you hear/see, make sure you subscribe, rate, review, share with your family and friends. It's BYU content literally daily, and it's on demand. It's available wherever and whenever you want to consume, and appreciate all y'all for being a part of it. All right, let's talk BYU football. Now, the FPI is out. It's called the Football Percentages Index. It's from ESPN. It's an analytical tool, and we talked earlier this week, for those of you who are, we like to call our everydayers here on the Locked On Podcast Network. You heard me talk about the SP Plus figures and how they factor into BYU's chances in the Big 12 this year, with or without Jake Retzloff. Now, any of you checking in for an update on Jake? Simply put, there's none. And I don't expect anything. I do think the next 30 days or so will kind of be the critical time period, because by the time BYU gets to Big 12 media days, kind of the early part of next month, that's the next time it feels like the national media is going to put firm attention on the Retzloff situation. Will there be movement before then? TBD, but something to monitor over the next 3, 4, 5 weeks leading up to that event. The bigger point is the FPI from ESPN is a analytics that they like to essentially be able to say what they think based on 20,000 simulations of the season, what things are looking like for every team, particularly in the Power 4 ranks. Well, here's the deal. They believe the BYU might be able to get by even if they don't have Jake Retzloff, because as they note in their FPI breakdown, BYU has, wait for it, the second easiest schedule in the Big 12. And that's nothing to sniff at. It's not BYU's fault that the Big 12 gave them what many perceive to be an uneven schedule and a weaker schedule at that, or maybe among the weakest. The thing is, the Cougars need to take advantage of that. You can only play who you're going to play. And yes, could they have beefed up the non-conference schedule had they wanted to? Yeah, but they absolutely, I think, did exactly what they planned on playing. They played an A-tier opponent. Speaking of a P4 opponent, they have Stanford coming to Provo. They played a B opponent on the road. They're going clear across the country. Is it Greenville, right, where East Carolina is located? They'll be playing at Dowdy-Ficklin Stadium there. And then they have their FCS game. I think they handled the non-conference very, very well. They can't control that Stanford is absolute in the dumps, but that's beyond one thing. Then you look at the Big 12 schedule. Yes, there are some pitfalls. There is a critical stretch starting with Utah that includes Texas Tech and TCU among it. And if BYU can navigate that stretch, they very well can find themselves in the Big 12 title hunt. I look at this, and the metrics say, according to the FPI, now, I would assume the FPI factors in, they're expecting Jake Retzloff. It gives BYU a 10.4% chance of winning the Big 12. In fact, it actually gives them a better chance to make the college football playoff than they do of winning the Big 12 at 12.6%. And then there are one of 8 teams with a slightly better than 0% chance of winning a national championship at 0.1%. So it's not out of the realm of possibility of BYU making a run here. What's it going to require? Well, it's going to require BYU finding, if they don't have Jake Retzloff, a capable quarterback, and they don't have to be a star. If they are a star, great. That's fantastic. Whether it's McKay Hillstead, Trayson Bourget, Bear Bachmeyer, they figure to kind of be the trio that will compete for that time. But I think the BYU has an incredible defense. If the defensive line that they retooled via the transfer portal, led by guys like Keanu Tanavasa and Justin Kirkland, if it's as good as it looks on paper, with the linebacking core, the returning guys in the secondary, you look at Isaiah Glasker, Jack Kelly at linebacker, guys like Tanner Wall, Raider DeMooney at safety, Evan Johnson, Maury Bomba at corner. BYU's defense is going to be absolutely ferocious if they are able to kind of live up and even surpass what they did last year. And that was, by many metrics, top 40 at worst, top 30, maybe even a top 20 defense at points last season. That's how good it was. They could be even better this year. That's going to hold BYU in games, even if they maybe don't have that senior signal caller under center. The other thing is, when LJ Martin has been healthy and the other running backs for BYU, including Sione Moa, Pokai Haunga, the BYU running game has got to be a strength this year. And I think that the way that BYU has been approaching keeping LJ Martin healthy through this offseason, because trust me, there were rumors all offseason long last year about various injuries, and I got him on the record, and he said, I'm fine, but it was very clear that after he got that high ankle sprain against SMU, he was not fine really until BYU got really late in that season, and maybe even until he got to that Colorado game in the Alamo Bowl, because that's when LJ Martin looked his absolute best. That is the LJ Martin that is the workhorse that I believe he can be and can be a focal point of BYU's offense. There is a bit of a misnomer in spread offenses that they're pass happy. No, the thing is, the spread offense, the whole idea is to open up the field and allow your running game to dominate. Chip Kelly, we talked earlier today about how the perception from Kenny Dillingham is that Oregon is the team of the 2000 to 2010, excuse me. Well, the Chip Kelly offense during that era, yeah, they spread you out, but they ran with impunity. That's what I think Aaron Roderick wants from this offense. He doesn't want to be slinging the rock 50 or 60 times a game. In fact, he would like it as balanced as possible. And the only way you have that is to have a workhorse running back or running backs that can really get downhill. And I'm assuming that LJ Martin is taking care of his body as best he can. And I would wrap him in bubble wrap until you get to that Portland State game, now 87 days away from today, and unleash him then. If he can lead BYU to where I think he can lead them, yeah, the quarterback situation is obviously a question mark, but I have faith that a guy like LJ, he absolutely can lead BYU to some pretty high heights. Yeah, you've retooled the offensive line in front of him, and the wide receivers obviously will be demanding the football. We talked yesterday, a great conversation with Carson Ryan. He'll expect the ball to be coming his way, but they know the best thing that can happen for an offense is a running game that can gain 4 or 5 yards per carry. When you do that, the entire playbook is wide open. Play action becomes even more deadly. And when BYU's offense has been at its best, think about it. Jaron Hall, Tyler Algier, Jamal Williams, Taysom Hill. They have really good quarterback play, but even more than that, they got a stud running back or running backs to pair with those guys. That is why I am bullish on BYU's chances with or without Jake Retzlaff. And I know there's some of you out there who want to say that, well, they won in spite of Jake in circumstances last year. Yeah, they may have won some games in spite of him in your mind, but there are other games that I think, simply put, BYU doesn't win last year without Jake. The one thing I like about Jake is he's a gamer. Is he the most polished quarterback? No, I have said it time and time again that he is what I consider to be a good quarterback. When BYU fans, you're accustomed to watching great or elite quarterback play. That doesn't mean that Jake couldn't have ascended or could ascend to great status, but right now he's a good quarterback, and he's led BYU to a pretty special season last year, 11-2. How do you one-up that? Well, you make a run at the Big 12 title. You make a run at the college football playoff, and the metrics for FPI favor BYU's chances of that because they have BYU projected for 8 wins flat and odds of going bowling at minimum at 89.2%. They have BYU 29th nationally, and they are 3rd in the Big 12. So the FPI considers BYU to be an upper echelon, if not an outright contender in the Big 12. I can live with that. I can look forward to that, and I'm looking forward to seeing what BYU does this season. You guys know me. I love football season. It is my pride and joy. College football is my muse, and I think BYU, even with that quarterback situation still unsettled, I still feel like they're in a very, very good spot, but it will require everybody in and around the football program to take it up just that extra notch, if at all possible, for BYU to live those dreams. We'll see how it all plays out, but I think the biggest news is that BYU very much is in the mix for a Big 12 title hunt this year, and you hope you have Jake with you, but if not, you got to look at somebody else and hope that they can step into those shoes and fill them, if not exceed them. All right, we'll finish up today's show with a potential future QB for BYU. Who is Brody Rudnicki, and why is he getting an offer from BYU despite not, as I understand it, not having started a varsity football game? Well, we'll try and make heads and tails of that next, right here on Locked On Cougars. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. My daily plea for you guys, if you have not done so already, please join the Locked On Cougars Inside Group, get the inside scoop on all things BYU sports, and it comes to your phone in the form of a text message. It's much more direct than that. No having to go to a message board or log onto a website to get the inside intel you crave. It comes directly to your phone. You can fire back with questions and comments of your own. And as always, It's a great service. In my opinion, I'm the proprietor of it, but you get 14-day free trial, 2 full weeks to see if it's the right option for you, and it's just $5 a month to be a part of the group after that. So I think it's a swinging deal, and hope you guys will join us in short order. All right, let's finish up today's show talking about QB recruiting. Now, obviously, there's a lot of us out there still wondering what Ryder Lyons is going to do. Well, he is at Folsom High School, and he is a fantastic prospect because, he's a 5-star prospect that BYU's in the hunt for. USC and Oregon, obviously, in the mix, and he's going to be making visits to all 3 programs, including BYU, this month. And the expectation is that he will make a decision sometime after that, ahead of what would be his senior season for the Folsom High School out there in California. Putting that aside, well, yesterday, if you did not see it, a guy also from Folsom High School who also happens to play quarterback announced that he has an offer from BYU. Well, who is he? He's Brody Rudnicki, and he mentions that his mom, in his tweet announcing his offer from BYU, is a BYU alumnus. Now, Brody is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as I understand it, and he is the principal backup to Ryder Lyons. Now, Folsom is a place that has got really high-level football around, and I'm going to throw this up here. I'm going to let you guys watch his highlights as we're talking about him. Now, these are his sophomore year highlights, to be clear, so these are not varsity highlights, but the bigger point is this is a kid that I think could absolutely become a future option for BYU, and apparently he is good enough of an option that BYU offensive coordinator Aaron Roderick decided to offer him a scholarship after watching him at BYU's camp, despite him not even starting a varsity football game. Now, he is a member of the 2027 recruiting cycle, so he's only a year behind Ryder Lyons. In theory, he would stay at Folsom this year as the backup to Ryder Lyons, and then really only have 1 full year as a full-time starter at the varsity level at Folsom High School. But if you watch these highlights, and if you're watching on YouTube, what I see, and I watch these multiple times, he shows the dual threat capability that BYU covets. He lists a 4.66 40-yard dash. He's got good size for a sophomore going into his junior season. It's 6'1.5" or 6'2", 200-plus pounds. But he also shows the arm to make every throw. Now, I will admit, these are at the sophomore level in California. So it's not varsity players he's going up against, but watch him throw guys open. That is a mark of a really, really good quarterback. And that's why I think Rudnicki is bringing to BYU. And I apologize. I probably should have noted this right at the outset. If I'm pronouncing his name wrong, I could not. I usually try and go find a video where they have pronunciation. I couldn't find one. So if I got it wrong, please, let me know in the comments. I always appreciate that because it does help me be better as a broadcaster and a podcaster. But I look at these highlights and I think that there's a reason why BYU sees something in this young man, because he's shined at camp, obviously, and you watch these highlights, he shows every intangible that BYU likes in their quarterbacks. And all of recruiting in many respects is about projecting years down the line. Now, this is a young man, like I mentioned, who's a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Let's say he's planning on going on a mission for the church. Well, as a member of the 2027 recruiting cycle, he would sign in 2027, go on a mission potentially if he doesn't go to BYU first, and then miss a full 2 years. So you may not see him until the end of this decade in 2030. That's how far down the line we're talking about here. And I know that some of you are out on recruiting because of the mission thing, and you say, well, it does me no good to talk about a kid like this because, simply put, my kids maybe be talking about this kid. I appreciate the fact that BYU's done their due diligence on guys like this. I know that Aaron Roderick, Matt Mitchell, kind of the quarterback coach tandem. Aaron has the quarterback coach title along with being the offensive coordinator for BYU. But Matt Mitchell, for lack of a better term, I know he's an offensive analyst, but he's the assistant quarterbacks coach at BYU. And they both do extensive homework on quarterbacks. They know about these kids going back in some cases to when they're in junior high school because they start coming to camps at BYU and they keep tabs on the guys. And I can understand why BYU offered Rudnicki here, because I look at it and I say, yeah, he's got everything that you want to see in a BYU quarterback. He's got wheels, dual threat capability, and the live arm, the big arm to push the ball down the field, which is an absolute hallmark of what Aaron Roderick is looking for at BYU. So looking at it, I'm both a bit surprised, but also stunned at the same time that BYU would have offered a kid of this caliber this early on in his high school career. But the more I look at it, yeah, he's got the skills that could potentially pay the bills down the line. So we'll see what happens. But yet another quarterback to kind of file away in terms of guys that you're looking at and saying, hey, what are the chances this guy could be the next guy? BYU has Keneal Sweetwine lined up. They have a guy like Enoch Watson coming home off of a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ. They figure it kind of be the next two guys to join the QB room. I have had people tell me that Emerson Geilman, who's going to spend his freshman season this year at BYU before going on a mission, could be a guy that is the dark horse to be maybe the best quarterback in the entire group that BYU currently has signed or committed. Now, if Ryder Lyons ultimately commits to BYU, I think he would probably take that cake because, simply put, he's a 5-star prospect. He's a top 20 national prospect. He would really just make BYU's recruiting class shine. And I talked earlier this week as well about BYU and the chances they could move inside the top 25 in recruiting rankings or the top 20. Well, having a 5-star prospect like Ryder Lyons in the mix, that absolutely entrenches you in that conversation. And those are the levels BYU needs to recruit at, quite frankly, if they really want to be a Big 12 contender annually. I know I had a comment on social media, or it might have been on YouTube, saying it's hard for me to get excited for 3-star prospects, Jake, because I'm past that. They need to be 4 and 5-star guys. Let me school you just a little bit on that. Not all 3 stars are made the same. It depends on the rating, and I prefer the 24/7 Sports ranking because they also has the composite rating. Anything 86 and above is what I consider to be a high 3-star. And it's not a perfect science. It never is. I mean, recruiting, like I said, it's prognosticating on guys literally years down the line. But if you're looking at a guy who's an 85 or lower 3-star prospect, yeah, that's more of the 3-star prospect that BYU has kind of made hay on over the past decade under Kalani Sitake, where more often than not, they have developed those guys and made them into 4 and 5-star production guys, given the time and resources in the program. The bigger point now is BYU starts to see their recruiting pipeline, see the 86, 87, 88, and then you get into the 89, 90s where it's a 4-star prospect. You start to add more of those guys. Guess what gets better? Your overall talent base, and thereby more chances to win and to win at a high level. So I really like what BYU is doing here. And yeah, you may have been stunned that a guy who's never never has suited up to start a varsity football game got an offer as a quarterback from BYU. But I trust Aaron Roderick's ability to scout talent. Some of you are out on A-Rod. I get that. Some of you like to label me an A-Rod stan. So be it. I really do think he does a great job evaluating talent. Has he landed all the guys you would like him to land? No, he hasn't. That's a fair criticism. But I can respect that he sees things that others may not see, and he wants to get in early with some of these prospects before they really blow up. Rudnicki at 24/7 Sports does not have any rating whatsoever so far. It's because he hasn't played varsity football yet, so it's hard to get a gauge of what kind of prospect he is. He may end up as a mid-tier 3-star prospect, but guess who else was a 3-star prospect? A guy named Zach Wilson, another guy named Jaron Hall. Pretty good quarterbacks, if you think about it. Wasn't Zach at one point a 2-star? So once again, it's an inexact science, but I can respect the way BYU goes about this. And I think that Brody Rudnicki is a name to file away for future reference. All right, that is going to do it for today's edition of the podcast. It's good to be back in the saddle. Had a little technical difficulty last night, but glad we were able to get a shorter form podcast out for you in the meantime. But we are back in action, full length podcast. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars a part of your day. Thank you for making your first listen, in fact, of the day. And once again, thank you for being everydayers with us right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.